I have followed a policy of not endorsing candidates, and this has grown out of the fact that the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, of which I am president, is a nonpartisan organization. However, I must honestly say that I have become deeply disenchanted with President Johnson. I feel that he is so emotionally involved in the war in Vietnam and so concerned about saving face more than achieving peace that we're going to have a change of administration. And I think both Mr. Kennedy and Mr. McCarthy represent the kind of competence, dedication, and relevant thinking on the basic issues that confront us today, that they are the kind of men that present the alternative that I think we need. Well, I must honestly say that I absolutely refuse to get in any public or even private debate with Congressman Powell, and I have no comment other than that I have not said anything in the nature of this to Mr. Powell in Bimini. I went to Bimini not to see him, but to get a few days' rest, and when he discovered I was on the island, he sent for me and wanted me to talk with him, and I did, but we didn't talk about any of the things that he has said. We talked about them.
Is the era of the moderate civil rights leader over?
Well, it depends on what you mean by the moderate civil rights leader. I do not think the era of reasonable, meaningful, militant protest is over. I think it has just arrived, so to speak. Sometimes we confuse the meaning of the word moderation and also the meaning of the word militancy. To be militant means to be demanding, to be persistent, to be insistent. And I feel that nonviolence, militantly executed and conceived, is still the most potent weapon available to the Negro in his struggle for freedom in the United States. That era is not over, and I don't think it will be over if we're going to solve this problem.
Dr. King, have you decided who you will support for the presidency?
No, I haven't.
From Vietnam has adversely affected any realistic motion toward the progress of civil rights?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I think the obsession with the war in Vietnam has turned all of the energies, all of the thinking, all of the time to that particular adventure. And this, as a result, I should say, has minimized the attention given to civil rights. It's very obvious to me that the war in Vietnam and the president's obsession with it have both served to divert attention from civil rights.
Last summer, sir, at the convention of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in Atlanta, you said that you were definitely going to campaign against Mr. Johnson unless he changed his policies about Vietnam. Do you intend to campaign against him? Do you think he has changed those policies?
Well, up to now, he has not changed them. He has remained true to his policy, and at points he's gone beyond where he was at that time. There's still talk of escalation, still talk of sending more troops to Vietnam, and I think the moment has come for this nation to seriously confront the fact that it must de-escalate the war in Vietnam and end it, and escalate the war against poverty and racism at home. And this is exactly what we are not doing. And I think all people of goodwill must take a stand against that war and a stand for justice and human dignity at this time.
Sir, the President's Commission on Civil Disorders said that order of magnitude changes as far as allocations of funds and attitudes must take place if catastrophe is to be avoided. At the same time, we see the Congress arguing over an open housing provision in the Civil Rights Bill, which seems to be a relatively minor matter. Do you think that the Congress has the responsiveness necessary to cope with the problems as outlined in the report?
Well, as it stands now, it doesn't have it. The Congress is quite recalcitrant in certain segments. It is still dominated to a large extent by Southern rural congressmen who join in a coalition with right-wing Northern Republicans to stand against any progressive move. I think the job now is to kind of develop a militant, massive movement that in some way goes over the head of Congress and appeals to the conscience or the self-interest of the nation, and thereby these forces will serve to bring pressure to bear on Congress. And I've seen that Congress, even amid its adamant positions on many things, reverse itself. I can well remember that they refused to bring into being the so-called rat bill, and yet the public rose up with such righteous indignation that they ended up reversing their position. I think we can get them to do the same thing on some of the things that are very relevant and important now, but it's going to mean great pressure on the part of the general population, and this is what we've got to develop.
Dr. King, there are reports that you're having difficulty mobilizing your march for April on Washington. This possibly was one of the reasons you moved the date back to the 22nd.
And there's absolutely no truth in that. We moved the date back to the 22nd because we discovered that Congress would be out for about 10 days, the Easter recess, and we wanted to be in Washington when Congress was there. So
how are you making out with the mobilization?
The mobilization is going very well. I'm on a tour right now, and it's going just as we had expected. At many points, it's going much better than we expected.
Can you tell us some of the plans for this march? What are you going to be doing there?
Well, I can't give all of the details of it. I don't think that would be wise at this point, but some of the things that we've already announced will be, one will be really marching into Washington on three legs, so to speak. One coming out of the South, one from the Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland area, and one from this area, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, all moving into Washington. Some by foot. We're going to have a mule train coming out of the South. When we get into Washington, we plan to build a shanty town right there in Washington. We plan to plague, so to speak, those who are in positions of policy-making positions, the congressmen themselves, in a massive lobbying, presenting the demands and trying to get them to see the necessity of acting. Now, there will be many other developments taking place. I can only say that they will all be nonviolently conceived and executed.
Can you control such a large group?
We don't have to fear about that. We've done it in the past, and I'm sure we can do it now. This is why we are holding the number down in the beginning to about 3,000 so that we can set the pattern of the movement. And I think once the pattern is set, this will be followed throughout.
Doctor, what do you think about the whole violent, non-violence argument that seems to permeate almost all the conversations that are going on across the nation on the subject of race now?
Well, I wouldn't predict that kind of violence. I hope it will not occur. And I know that the predictions of violence can be an invitation to it. Consequently, I wouldn't predict it. I hope it doesn't happen. I'm realistic enough to know that the conditions that brought the riots into being last summer are still alive in our country. And consequently, I must say that if something isn't done very soon, before the summer comes into being, to express a great act of concern and a great act of determination to remove these conditions, then we will probably see some of the same violent explosions this summer that we saw last summer.
One more question.
Thank you for your patience and for allowing us, but we must go on. I have a little better than 1,000 people waiting, and we do have a program that files at 7:30. You've been more than understanding under the circumstances, and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Just soon they move some of the equipment, let me set that up for you.
That's it.